Hey guys, it's Aaron again with deck profile number 2 as promised of 4 deck profiles today. Next up is another deck that's been waiting 12 sets of support since it first got its support in set 1, and that is Nubatama. So let's get things started. The starter of choice is Stealth Beast Kuroko. Now most people say run 1, but in fact I actually run 2. Purely because of its effect, and if you're facing certain cards like certain decks like Kagero or any retiring heavy decks like Eradicators, it's kind of like a safety policy, because obviously they're going to have to waste resources on getting rid of both, purely because of what it does. Now it's got the Forerunner skill, as everyone knows what that does, and the effect of when it's on the rear guard, when the attack hits a Vanguard during the battle this unit boosted. If you have a Nubatama Vanguard, you may pay the cost, which is Soul Blast in 1, and if you do, choose up to 2 cards from your opponent's bind zone and put them into his or her drop zone. It's kind of scary when you've got certain cards like the boss monster, I believe that is Kabuki Kongo, which obviously its limit break is Count Blast in 1 when it attacks. You bind all of your opponent's rear guards, so obviously if this is boosting that unit, you get to probably get rid of 2 units that are problem cards for you. So it's pretty handy. So it's sort of like a long way round of discarding kind of them from the hand, which is what Nubatama's main focus used to be. Next up is the triggers, which obviously everyone has to do this because they've only got 1 of each, which is the 4 crit, which is Stealth Dragon Kurogane, 4 of those. Forgive me if I mispronounce her name wrong, because it's kind of funny to say, which is Stealthfiend's Shikihime, and she's the heal trigger. Del seems to think she's super kawaii. Next up is 4 stand trigger, Stealth Fiend Mashiramomen, which is kind of like the Margul clone, but obviously in stand trigger form. So you put it into Soul, choose up to 1 of your Nubatama cards, and that unit gets 3,000 to the end of the turn. And last but not least, probably my favourite trigger of all time because of its artwork, Stealth Fiend Otsuzura. Just like his artwork, nothing more, and drawing cards is nice as usual. Next up, the grade 1s. Like in the previous video, because of Nouvelle, I'm having to run full perfect guards in nigh on every deck I run, and I don't like doing it because I just never did. But obviously it's the perfect guard, it doesn't need much explaining, but it's pretty nice name. Stealth Beast Mujinga Kure, and it's got nice art as well. Next up is, I believe it's 4 Stealth Rogue of the Night Sakura Fubuki. It's the 8k vanilla grade 1 of the clan. Next up is a card all the way from set 1, Stealth Dragon Dreadmaster. Its effect is actually pretty nice, pretty nifty. When an attack hits during a battle, this unit boosted a Nubatama, so it doesn't even have to be a Vanguard that is boosting. If the number of your cards in your hand is less than your opponent, you may pay the cost of Count Blast in 1, and if you do, your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discards it. Now the other card I was testing out instead of the 2 starters was Hagakure, so when it's called to Guardian Circle, I believe, you Count Blast 1 if your hand is less, and then your opponent discards 1, but I decided against it and thought 2 Kurokos were actually much better, and obviously Dreadmaster is actually pretty powerful with the effect. Next up, last but not least, a card that has actually got an errata since it's been released, not that far, is Tempest Stealth Road Fuki. Now you might notice, if I can hold it up to the camera properly, it's not going to do it properly because of the matte sleeves. It's basically the effect reads on this card at the moment: you Count Blast 1 and put it into Soul, which is the cost. If you have a Nubatama Vanguard, and the number of cards in your opponent's hand is 3 or less, you may pay the cost. That part there has been changed to if you have a Nubatama Vanguard and the number of cards in your opponent's hand is 3 or more, which is what it's now changed to, and you must play it as that, you pay the cost, and if you do, choose a card at random from your opponent's hand and bind it face down until the end of the turn, and then it goes back to the opponent's hand by that effect. So it's kind of like Kimnara, but in similar respect, where it counts blast 1, move to soul. But obviously this binds a card from the opponent's hand. I mean, they've got less guard to deal with. Next up are the grade 2s. Now you have to run 4 of this, otherwise you're playing them wrong in my opinion. And it's Stealth Beast Tamahagane, and the effect is when this unit is placed on the Vanguard or Rear Guard, if you have a Nubatama Vanguard, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it face up, and at the end of the turn your opponent puts that card bound by this effect back into his hand. But then that card is actually pretty handy, gets rid of problems like maybe intercepts, especially like them special intercepts where they intercept for 10,000, or other certain problem cards that you don't want on the field anymore. But then it combos very nicely with this next card, which is for Stealth Dragon Kokujo. Sorry about that. During your turn, when your opponent's card is placed in his or her bind zone, and if you have a Nubatama Vanguard, this card gets 2,000 till the end of the turn. So basically, with the boss monster, that's a minimum of 10k if they've got 5 rear guards out, which is pretty scary. Oh, sorry for the coughing. And last but not least, for the grade 2s, is 3 Stealth Rogue of 1,000 Blaze Oboru Sakura. So it's basically the 10k vanilla of the clan. Nothing really much to say. Next up is the main boss monster of the clan, Shura Stealth Dragon Kabuki Kongo. As I kind of explained briefly earlier, the limit break ability is Count Blast 1. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, bind all of your opponent's rear guards face up. Oh, sorry about the coughing. Bind all of your opponent's rear guards face up, and if the number of cards in your opponent's bind zone is 3 or more, this unit gets plus 10,000 until the end of that battle. And at the end of the turn, your opponent must put the cards back into his hand bound by this effect. It also has 2 other skills. One to Count Blast 1, and it gains 2,000 to the end of the turn. And it has the Lord skill, which if you have a unit without a same clan as this card, Kabuki Kongo can't attack. So when break ridden, this is minimally hitting for 31,000 if they've got a full field, which is pretty handy considering if it's being boosted by Kuroko, that's nigh on all times a sure certain effect that you're going to get Kuroko's effect off. Last but not least, I run 4 of the break ride. Shura Stealth Dragon Kujikiri Kongo. The break riding effect is, when the Nubatama rides this unit, choose your Vanguard, and until the end of the turn it gets plus 10,000, like most do. Your opponent chooses 1 card from his or her hand, discards it, and it also chooses 1 card from their hand and binds it face down until the end of the turn. Then it's also got another ability like power boost effect, like most break rides. It's when it attacks, if the number of your cards in your opponent's hand is 3 or less, it gets plus 2,000, and then it also has the Lord skill. Now this card is actually pretty handy, so it's why I run 4 of this over 4 of the other monster, considering Kabuki Kongo rather. To me it's probably seen more as a game ender, and if you break ride over this, it's like continuously making them discard cards, bind cards, so it's pretty handy. Overall, I was rather excited to see that this clan actually did get more support. They have been waiting far too long for it, and I'm kind of excited to see what Legion may bring for them, considering that's a scary new mechanic and it allows them to recycle resources. So I hope you like the Nubatama deck profile. Sorry for the coughing, I've got a bit of a dry throat at the moment. And if you like, comment, subscribe, tell me your experiences of Nubatama, see if you've faced them or if you like enjoying using them. Maybe even suggestions on how to improve this one. Just write it all in the comments boxes below. And yeah, I'll see you there. See you later.